Hello, everybody, and welcome into Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodities sector. My name is Jesse Day, and on today's episode, I'm very excited to welcome Alex Krainer to the show. An author, market analyst, researcher, trader, and hedge fund manager, and the creator of iSystem Trend Following. As tensions continue to rise in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the EU seems intent on a war to the bitter end. How does Alex see it all playing out, and will European countries like Poland and Germany conscript their population to die for the cause? We're going to discuss the continued chilling assault on free speech going on in EU countries, including the seizure of assets of those who dare commit thought crimes. We're going to find out why Alex thinks we may be on the cusp of a commodities supercycle up ahead. We're going to talk about gold, of course, and so much more. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation with Alex Krainer. Alex Krainer, great to have you back on the program. I want to start off with the fact that we have now seen Russia directly accusing the UK and France of being involved in recent attacks on their energy infrastructure. We've seen Starmer and Macron get very friendly recently in their proclamations of being willing to support Ukraine to the bitter end. And it also appears that despite Trump's efforts to bring this conflict to a conclusion, the EU and Ukraine also seem intent on keeping this going until the bitter end, not only France and the UK. I'm wondering what your current assessment of the situation here is. Is this over in terms of this coming to a peaceful conclusion? Are we now headed for perhaps a larger war up ahead that could involve the EU, NATO, etc.?
Well, as they say, wars are great revealers. And what we are finding out now is exactly where the fault lines lie. We see once more the same or similar historical patterns emerge where London and Paris, the old centers of colonialist expansionism, are emerging again as the pro-war leaders in Europe. So far, we've always been led to believe that this is the American empire, that the Americans are driving everybody into all these militaristic imperialist misadventures around the world. But you see that the second that the United States withdraws from the leadership positions and tries to change course, it's London and Paris, as always, who are actually leading the charge, even though they don't have a whole lot to lead with. So to answer your question, whether this is finished now, it may be finished insofar as the hot war with Ukraine is going. That is, there's still mopping up to do, and it might take another few weeks or months before Ukraine capitulates. But at the moment, there's nothing much that they can reverse the situation. Now, for London and Paris and the EU, but EU is again another vassal structure of the real power. For them, given that they have no military power that could challenge Russia, it is absolutely essential for them to do everything they possibly can to bring the United States back on board. So they're trying to seduce Trump into it with dangling these rare earth mineral deals and gifts and inducements. At the same time, they're working on the destabilizing the Trump administration. They're attacking it from all sides to weaken their hand. I think that the U.S. economy is going to be the administration's Achilles heel. And so much of what we're seeing between Europe and the United States is Europe trying to, one way or another, bring the United States back on board with Trump or without Trump. And given that the battle is existential for both sides, so it's existential for Russia, but it's also existential for the old European oligarchies that are ultimately the deciders in all of this. There are no holds barred, and if they have to assassinate Trump, they will try to do that. Uh, there is no scruple that's going to hold them back from trying to achieve their objectives. When the hot war in Ukraine is over, the war will continue by other means, and I believe that the Russians will continue to pressure the West, particularly these Western oligarchies, by diplomatic and legal means. Because if we rewind the clock back to the early 1990s, when the Soviet Union collapsed, and which is when the West first started infiltrating Ukraine, they also pretty much took over Russia by installing the regime of Boris Yeltsin. And during those 1990s, they basically collapsed the Russian economy. The Russian economy sustained a 50% decline in the GDP. And then they used that to plunder literally hundreds of billions, if not trillions, of Russian wealth, and spirit it out of the country into the offshore centers in the West. And then they used the Magnitsky legislation to create a moat around Western jurisdictions, so that the Russians cannot pursue all these stolen goods. And I think that the Russians will diplomatically pressure Western jurisdictions to do away with these Magnitsky legislations, and then they're going to bring these suits and the discovery process, which will enable them to trace the stolen goods all the way to the ultimate beneficial owners. And that should completely unmask this Western oligarchy. So that's where the battle will continue. But at the same time, the Western oligarchy will do absolutely everything in their power to try to prevent this from happening, which is why the United States is now the essential part of the solution for both sides. Because if the Russians manage to revive their alliance with the United States, they will probably be successful in this. If they don't, they won't. So the United States is now in a position to influence either side. There's the Russians will try to, both sides will try to woo them to their side with economic inducements. So the Russians are offering them their own version of mineral deals. The Ukrainians, as a proxy of British interests, are trying to play along with some minerals deal of their own. We'll see what's going to happen in the end. I think that the cost-benefit analysis at the moment is very, very clearly in favor of the Russian side, which is why there's also the whole mess in the Middle East, where again the British secret diplomacy and their secret services are trying to induce the United States to launch a big war against Iran. And at the moment, it's not at all clear where the Trump administration stands on that. I mean, overtly, it looks like they're ready to go to war against Iran. But, as far as we know Trump, we can't dismiss the possibility that he is ratcheting up tensions in order to get a good deal out of Iran. But we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I think we're at the hour of maximum danger right now.
Hey guys, a quick break to hear from today's sponsor, ARC, Silver, Gold, Osmium, and to let you know all about the special that they are offering at this point in time, which are 2023 silver kangaroos, 1 ounce coins, mint fresh at only $2.07 over spot. So be sure to reach out to owner of ARC Silver Gold Osmium, Ian Everard, today at 307-264-9441. You can also contact him by email at ian@arcsgo.com. Make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you. Once again, Silver Kangaroos 2023, 1 ounce coins, mint fresh, $2.07 over spot. Well, supplies last. And now, back to the episode. So you said that the European elite, the oligarchs, have no scruples. So is it time to throw some bodies into the meat grinder here? What are your thoughts on the calls for mandatory military conscription in places like Poland and Germany? Germany even having a debate, should we conscript all the women as well? After all, we're in the brave new world where men can be women, and also men are exactly equal to women in all categories. So of course women should go to the front lines too. Is this the way the EU is planning to shore up their military weakness and potentially try to even the score in Russia by throwing their citizens on the front lines?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is what they're doing now. The big multi-trillion euro spending plans to boost the defense industries is all part of this scenario, and it's very reminiscent of what we've seen in the 1930s in Europe, and also what we've seen in Ukraine after 2014 in the run up to the current war in Ukraine. So it's the West has kind of disarmed itself. First, they've completely neglected their militaries because they didn't figure they were going to need them, really. And then the militaries represent a source of risk to the oligarchies, because with the militaries, there's always a very strong dimension of patriotism. And if there's no external enemy, then these patriots might come to realize that the enemy is really at home. And then, you have a big, powerful body that can weigh into the political developments in the country and sideline the oligarchy. So then they prefer to have, generals and corporals in red high heel shoes and wave LGBT flags and things like this. And then, generally disarm and demoralize the troops. Well, now that Russia is winning in Ukraine, now they need the militaries after all. So they're starting the process all over again. First by resurrecting the defense industries. And so they're already allocating hundreds of billions of dollars in each country to do that. And then they are talking about conscription. And then also they are ramping up the anti-Russian propaganda, so that they could kind of engineer consent, or at least passive acquiescence to the future war against Russia. And I think that the process can't happen overnight. So people aren't sensing the danger quite the way we should, because it'll take a while for the arsenals to be full again. It'll take time for there to be enough tanks and howitzers and cannons available for the next war against Russia. And it'll take time to train up, hundreds of thousands of troops in every country. That time is probably going to be 5 or 6 years. And over those 5 or 6 years, we're going to see progressive demonization of Russia, and they're going to try to blame all of the ills of our Western societies on Russia. And we already see that they're the think tanks are already producing new stories. For example, that for his own health and well-being, Vladimir Putin takes regular baths in deer blood, but not just any kind of deer blood. It's the blood extracted from their antlers. So for every bath, you need to kill, a few thousand deer, and the best kind of blood comes out of the particularly cute and fluffy ones. So, they're already doing this, and this is not happening randomly. This is funded. This is the money that goes to the think tanks to think up ways to polarize the public opinion in Europe against Russia. But that is usually not sufficient as an inducement. So very likely at some point in the future, which may not be straight away, but when they're ready towards 2029, 2030, they're going to orchestrate a spectacular false flag incident, because that's what rapidly galvanizes public opinion, because it engages people's emotions. And then in that highly emotional moment, they push in the narrative, and then they create what you call a mass formation psychosis. And they say, oh, it's the Russians, we have to go kill them. Everybody to arms. And that's when the whole thing gets going. So I think that this is the worry, and the fact that it's not yet as discernible as it should be shouldn't leave us complacent, because we have to remember that the Ukrainians never wanted to go to war. The Ukrainian public opinion was completely opposed to going to war against Russia. Nevertheless, now they've sacrificed more than 1 million Ukrainians in that war. So we shouldn't feel that just because there's no appetite for war in Europe now, that we should say like, oh, well, they can try to do this, but it's all in vain because nobody really wants this war. Give them time. They know what they're doing. It's a social engineering process. They've done it before. They're counting on being able to do it again, and they are doing it. So we have to push back unless we're okay with our kids serving as cannon fodder on the Eastern Front.
Yeah, very crazy times. In terms of a false flag, obviously there's a lot of options there. Cyber attack, something like that could obviously be a way to do it, wiping out people's bank accounts or something and claiming it was the Russians. What are your thoughts in terms of how they would prepare this type of false flag event? Because it's a little more difficult if we're talking about actual death and destruction on the European continent. I mean, I guess that's a possibility because, like you said, these people have no scruples. They just don't care. They're willing to do whatever it takes. If that means taking out some of their own citizens to whip up a war fervor, I'm sure they would do that. What's your opinion there on how they might carry out? Obviously, we can't know the future, but just some potential, some thoughts on what you think might be possible coming from these people.
Well, you see, a few weeks ago, Financial Times published an article titled, something to the effect that Europe has to dismantle its welfare state in order to build up its warfare state. And the author, Mr. Janan Ganesh, who really should be made famous, said that chronic discomfort is no longer enough, that an element of real fear has to be introduced. And so, I think that cyber attack doesn't really, it's a little bit abstract to your daily life. Cyber attack, okay. Bank accounts got wiped. All of those things kind of, you have to fix them. So people expect that they will get fixed. But elements of real fear, I think, require big explosions. And maybe attacks with biological or chemical weapons. Back in 1938, 1939, when the British were trying in, uh, to scare their own population about what the Germans might do, they started talking about chemical attack. They were saying that Goering's going to start bomb, because people were still under impression of the mustard gas, the horror of the mustard gas in World War One, and they were like, well, now Germany has this big air force and mustard bombs, and they're going to be dropping it on our cities and towns, killing us by the thousands. And then they they backed up those stories with they brought trucks out and vans with gas masks, and they were inviting people to come for the fitting, and they were giving away these gas masks for whole families to have, so that people thought like, oh gosh, this is really coming. Let's make it real. And now we've just seen, I think 2-3 days ago, the European Union produced a video about preparing your survival bag, which is complete nonsense. They're saying like, oh, have your phone, your charger, a Swiss Army knife, a lighter, some matches, and a couple of those protein bars or something stupid like that, and some water. And they're starting to propagandize us to expect something really bad to happen. And then, if something really bad actually does happen, then they say like, you see, we were right. And this danger is never going to go away until, we take care of it. So we have to go to war.
Well, that's interesting, because it does seem the problem being, I think, that your average citizen of the EU and in many places in the world does not believe that their own government is capable of evil in the way that they are. They believe that, well, there's no way that they would attack their own citizens. It's obviously has to be Russia in this case. I think people don't even question it.
Well, I think, to be fair, Jesse, I think that what you just said was much more true before 2020 than it is now. Because I think that the 2020 event was another moment that catalyzed the Great Awakening. And now you see that in most Western countries, even if people are kind of passive and disoriented, there's a very low level of trust in the government and in the media. So they kind of expect that they're being lied to. And so, that's a completely new element. All their playbooks are very obsolete now, because all their playbooks were written before there was internet, before there were social media. And, they were able to completely control the narrative by controlling the newspapers and radios and radio stations and TV stations. But today they can't. And it's a big, big problem. So, they will follow their old recipes, their old playbooks, but they've done so over the last 20 years on a number of issues. And I think it's pretty much failed every single time.
Yeah, that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out in this modern era where people have become disillusioned. Side note, one of the reasons I love living in Serbia, because the government will be the first area that people would point the finger in any sort of event like this.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and people would take action too. I mean, in extreme situations, they're willing to get violent here, which terrifies a lot of people, but gives me a warm, comforting feeling. Confusing many people who I speak to. But I want to talk about the continued assault on free speech that seems to be ramping up in the EU. The latest story I've heard about here is an Irish teacher who was fired for refusing to refer to a student by their pronouns. And then he reported the Irish court stole all the money in his bank account, over 40,000 euros, for not going along with the narrative or for being some sort of proponent of hate speech. I believe he refused to go along with certain transgender agendas in general that the educational system was trying to push. I mean, first of all, this is important. Why it's important to diversify your assets, get a bank account in a jurisdiction outside of your own country, get a hold of some gold and silver. I know this will upset people in the comments, but Bitcoin as well, they can't even seize that, whereas they could come to your home and seize your gold and silver. So important to do that. I mean, what's going on in Ireland now? I mean, Conor McGregor's now stepping up, saying he's going to try to become the next president of Ireland to make Ireland great again and get rid of all of the illegal immigrants, etc. What are your thoughts there, and how is this even being allowed to happen at this point in time?
Well, the freedom of speech is now one of the biggest obstacles that they're faced. And in fact, if you listened on the last, I think, 2 Davos World Economic Forum summits, they really explicitly identified misinformation and disinformation as the greatest threats, even worse than Russia and terrorism. It's really vexing them because they're not able to control the narrative. They can't control what people think and how they interpret world events because they no longer trust the news. They go to social media to try to work out what the hell is going on. And then, they work out something close to the truth. And so the people in power are now desperate to put that genie back into the bottle and to regain control of the narrative. And so they're working on trying to get all the social media companies to comply with their diktats, which, some comply, but some don't. And then they're also trying to intimidate those who speak their minds and make an example of them, so that we would, kind of censor ourselves out of fear that they're going to come and get us and punish us and destroy our lives. They are going to hurt some people. There's no doubt about that. But there's too many of us, and there's too few of them, and they can't hurt us all. And so, for anybody out there who is feeling nervous about what might be happening, just remember that whatever fight you decline today is the fight that your children are going to have to fight in the future, or they're going to be slaves. So you have to keep things into perspective. They can't kill us all. They can't put us all in prison. Even when there's a big war, it's not like half of the population gets killed. In the whole duration of World War II, I think France lost something about 1.3% of the population. I think that Britain lost 0.5, 0.6. Germany and Russia lost more, but you have to remember that the risk that something will happen to you is not all that great. It's not big. So don't be intimidated, don't be afraid, and don't let them win, because if they do, your children are going to be slaves.
Yeah, that's a dramatic way to put it, but it kind of encapsulates the situation that's out there at the moment. I want to switch over to the investment world now and talk about commodities. I want to read a post you put on X. You said, "Are metal prices kicking off the new commodity supercycle? After gold, copper also made new all-time highs today. Demand for inflation hedges could be the reason for gold, copper, and silver rallies." So unpack that for us. Do you think we are on the cusp of a potential commodity supercycle?
Yeah, I do think that that's very likely. In fact, we are, the inflation is regaining momentum, and people can see it. And I think that even though the economies in the Western world are not exactly doing well. The prices of key commodities are going up, and the fact that it's gold, silver, and copper tells me that it's demand for inflation hedges that is probably part of in large part the driver of these price rallies. But then longer term, energy is going to pick up as well. We have a very tense situation in the Middle East. If anything happens between Iran and the United States, we'll have major disruption in oil traffic through the gates of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. We might have a large scale destruction of oil producing facilities in Saudi Arabia, and oil could jump to $100 or $200 or $300 a barrel in a very short time. So that would be another catalyst of the commodity supercycle. And then let's not forget that the European economies now they have already set in motion these multi-trillion dollars of investments into the defense sector. And so you're basically going into heavy industries because you need a lot of steel, you need a lot of metals, you're going to need a lot of copper, you're going to need a lot of energy. So all of this is going to put a real boost to the demand for commodities. And so that is another, it's almost like a perfect storm potentially coming together, a confluence of several factors that are going to boost commodity prices over the next 10, 25 years. And I think that we're only at the beginning of that. And then, to put the price rises into perspective, we saw gold go up by about 50% over the last 15 months or so. And now people say like, oh, it's missed that boat. That's now too expensive. But, we are in a major inflationary cycle. These cycles tend to last 10 to 15 years. Last time we had a major inflationary cycle was in the 1970s, and between 1971 and 1980, gold price appreciated by 24-fold. Not 24%, 24-fold, from $35 an ounce to $800 an ounce. And I think that silver went up something like 50-fold. So I think that we might be in the early stages of these developments.
And talk to us about gold specifically. I want to hone in on that because there's been a lot of talk, particularly over the last few years, about the BRICS gold-backed currency was going to be unveiled. I think that's a far more complicated proposition than people were giving it credit for. Putin can't just come to some conference and announce that it takes years or perhaps even decades of preparation to get such a system in place to actually be operational, not to mention the diplomacy required between the BRICS nations to bring that to fruition, etc. However, we've now seen talk in the US of gold reserves potentially being revalued, currently sitting at $48.88, I believe, on the Fed's balance sheet. It might be 42, somewhere around there. They're talking about revaluing the gold. The auditing of Fort Knox has kind of brought gold, or the talk of that, into mainstream consciousness a little bit. I don't know if you follow the work of Gehring and Rosenzweig. They do some of the best research out there when it comes to the commodities space. And they're talking about how every major commodities supercycle generally tends to kick off with some kind of monetary regime change. And they believe that we are perhaps facing one of those right now when it comes to gold and the role it will play. What are your thoughts there? Do you think we could see gold return to the monetary system in some form or another up ahead? And if so, what form do you think that would take?
Well, I'll decline to guess what form that might take, but in some form, yes, absolutely, because we're going to see all the currencies of the major Western powers begin to decline in a sustained way, and that's part of the commodity supercycle. Because what you actually have is not that the commodity prices are going up, but that the purchasing power of the currency is going down. And so to rescue these currencies, you need to reset the monetary system. You're going to have to set it on some kind of a real asset basis. So I think gold is certainly going to be part of that. But I think that more likely there's going to be a mix of gold and other commodities. Probably somewhere in the direction of what the BRICS countries have begun to develop conceptually. And then at some point something's going to be announced, but we're certainly going to be ambushed by that. They're not going to tell us, on 31 December or 2025, we're going to change the money, because it would send the markets into a panic. So it has to be done. It has to be done abruptly and without too much pre-announcement.
Well, it will be interesting to see how that all develops. Very fascinating times, which is why I always love having you on the show, Alex. Tell us about Trend Compass, Krainer Analytics, anywhere else you want to direct people online who want to hear more from you.
So thank you, Jesse. So I am active on X. My handle is @nakedhedgy, and then I publish a daily trend following newsletter that provides directional exposure and trading signals for up to 200 different financial and commodities markets. The lowest price version is on Substack. It's called iSystem Trend Compass. And then I also have a personal Substack where I publish a bit less frequently, but generally more thoroughly researched and more refined articles and papers. This is that is Alex Krainer's Substack, and that's the three platforms where I'm most active, and from there it's easy to find my website and everything else.
Great. Well, I'll put all those links in the description below. Thank you once again, Alex, for coming on. It's always a blast speaking with you, and I look forward to the next time we can connect.
Thank you for having me, Jesse. Until the next time, and warm greetings to everybody out there.
And thank you for joining us today. This episode is brought to you by ARC, silver, gold, osmium. For all your precious metals needs, head to arcsgo.com. Contact owner Ian Everard today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com. Take advantage of their special Silver Kangaroos 2023 mint fresh $2.07 over spot while supplies last. Reach out today and tell them that Commodity Culture sent you. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.